Hello everyone, this is Al Fadi and I want to welcome you back to a continuation of this video series entitled The Search for Muhammad. We've been debunking a number of historical documentation that are typically used to prove the existence of Muhammad. Today we are going to take a look at one of such important document actually to our Muslim friends, that is the Quran. With me here to discuss this is our dear brother, Dr. J. Smith. Dr. J, so we've been debunking historical documentations or alleged historical documentations, but today you are going to also use the Quran itself.
Yeah, the Quran. And this is something that would have to be here. If Muhammad did exist, he should be all through this book. What do you know about Muhammad in this book? Is he all through it?
Well, I mean, I'll give you the traditional understanding as a Muslim. Yeah, Muhammad is all through it, but if you ask me by name, probably a handful, 4 times.
Only 4 times that his name is in the Arabic.
That's right.
Now, all the way through in the English translation, they put Muhammad, 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 Muhammad.
Insertions,
always,
of course, yeah.
Always in brackets. So for those who are watching, whenever you see the name Muhammad and it's in brackets, you know that that is an interpolation. That is a commentary. They're putting that as a commentary. It is not in the Arabic. And you can just, what I always do, I always make sure that I have the Arabic and the English next to each other. Do that. Make sure you have a Quran that has both side by side. So when you make this argument, you can go to the Muslim and say, where's it in the Arabic? Where's it in the Arabic? They're assuming it is. It's always, whenever it says representative of God or messenger of God or apostle of God or prophet of God, they assume and they put Muhammad's name in there, where in many cases he should not be there. In fact, if he is so important, if he is the greatest of all prophets, if this whole book was revealed to him and it refers to him over and over and over again, like in the Shahada, there is only one God but God, and Muhammad is his prophet, which is not found in the Quran as one title or as one phrase. It's separated, but the prophet of God, even the name itself means the praised one, is it not? Isn't that what it means in Arabic?
At least the translation of the name, yes, or the title.
So I asked this of Murad. Murad is, he understands Aramaic, he also understands and does an awful lot of work in the Syriac, but he also is a native Arab speaker. He is from the Middle East himself, and he has been working on this for years. And he and I did a video a number of months ago where we asked this very thing. And I said, okay, Murad, you're the one that has really worked on this. You understand the Quran. You have grown up with the Quran all your life. You know where these 4 references are. Let's look at the slide. Let's put the slide up there, and you can see the references there on the slide. There is Murad, a researcher from the Middle East and a native Arab speaker. And he says, Jay, do you really think that is Muhammad there? I mean, the Muhammad the man, when it refers to those 4 instances? Because there's only 4 instances. Now, stop and think. If this book is all about this God and this man, why is it we have 99 references to Isa in the Quran and only 4 references to Muhammad? What does that suggest to you?
Well, I mean, it's kind of peculiar, really, when you find Jesus, Moses, Abraham mentioned far more than the Prophet of Islam, who's supposedly the final messenger, the seal of the prophets, and so on and so forth. And so there's something really peculiar about this.
There's something odd about this. Right. If he is the one that is part of the Shahada, if he is there alongside Allah as the statement of faith that all Muslims must use whenever they are going into battle, whenever they are going and actually giving their life to, if they convert, if this is the case and he's right there with God all the time, then why is it there's only 4 references to him in the Quran?
Right.
It shows that he's not, either he's second class or maybe that's not even him. This is what Murad is intimating. Now, I'm still on the fence on this one. I'm not going to take a position on this. This is a white paper, as I call it. At breakfast this morning, I explained what a white paper is. I don't know if you know what it is or not. Why don't you see if you do know what or not. What do we mean by white paper?
Just to get a feeler out there, feel an idea, a thought, data, research maybe, and see what kind of peer review or pushback you can get.
And governments do this. They do this in Britain all the time. They call them white papers, where they leak something to the press that puts it right across head pages, front cover. People then react, and then the government looks and sees, well, this is a good idea or it's not a good idea, and they look to see what the rebuttals are, and they realize if this is a good, sound doctrine or not a sound doctrine. Well, doctrine would be theological. Sorry, political position to take or not a good political position to take, and that's why it's a feeler. You're right. It's just like testing the waters. In some ways, this is what I'm going to do. This is a testing of waters. So we're putting it out there, but Muslims are claiming, this proves that Muhammad had to be there in the 7th century because this was written in the 7th century. We're not going to get into manuscript evidence. We're not going to do that at this point. Otherwise, we could throw that out of the water just to throw that out to show that there are not any manuscripts that early anyways. The manuscripts don't really begin to appear until the 8th century, about 705 and later, except for the lowercase of your Sana manuscript. But let's go and talk about these four. So let's look at them. Let's put the slide back up there. And you can see the four references are chapter 3, verse 144, which says, and the Blessed One. I'm going to use the Blessed One because that's how Muhammad is in Arabic. So the Blessed One is no more than a messenger. All right, what Blessed One? Who is it referring to? This could be Jesus, actually. That's what's fascinating. If you look at the context, you can see that. Chapter 33, verse 40. The Blessed One is not the father of any of your men, but he is a messenger of Allah and the last of the prophets. Well, that's fascinating, because that is where they get this injunction from, that Muhammad must be the last of the prophets, without realizing that this could also be the Blessed One. It could be almost anybody. In this case, it could also be Jesus. And this is what Murad is trying to say. Now, I'm not still completely convinced. I know that Mel is convinced, and so is our good friend here that we have here. Robert Spencer is convinced that these are nothing more than the probably person of Jesus, because it's, as we're going to see with the dome and the rock, you can see much the same argument.
I'm going to take this position, and I would say, then this will prove to us something, that someone who is a Christian background, who invented, basically a book called the Qur'an, if we're talking about Jesus being the final one, because the Islamic position is that it's Muhammad who is the final one. So we have this tension, and I agree with you that taking a final position on this is a little bit hard right now until you get to the bottom of how.
Until you ask yourself, who is the one that takes a position that Muhammad is the final one? Where do you find that? That is found in the Cira. That is found in the Hadith. That is found in the 9th century. That is found in Abbasid literature.
But the Quran also does mention him.
Here it mentions him,
right,
yes.
Exactly.
Unless you talk about the Spirit. So let's just take this on board. Does this prove that Muhammad is in the 7th century? No, because none of these are from the 7th century to begin with. Nonetheless, chapter 47, verse 2, and believe in that which is sent down to the Blessed One. Okay? Chapter 48, 29, the Blessed One is the messenger of Allah. So this could be anybody who is a messenger, anybody who is, it's twice as messenger of Allah, or who is the last of the prophet, or one who is sent down, the Blessed One. None of them refer to a person called Muhammad, is what Murad is saying. I'm on the fence on that. I'm not going to say yea or nay on that yet. They most likely refer instead to the Blessed One. Note that is what the word Muhammad means, who could very well be Jesus. So his conclusion is, if this is not a man at all, then Muslims cannot use the Quran to support Muhammad's existence in the 7th century, and one of the foundational pillars of Islam begins to fall. So let's put it out there. Let's see how people come back to us on this. I'm not going to suggest that I'm holding steady to this. I do take the position, unlike Robert Spencer or Mel and Murad, that this may be Muhammad, and this is as we're going to see in the Dome of the Rock. That also is about the same time period that the Qurans are beginning to be introduced. Mm-hmm. What we haven't done yet, we haven't looked at chapter 3, 33, or 47, or 48 to look and see where that was introduced into the Quran. Could be these are all much later renditions, because we know that the Quran was still being introduced as late as 749. Well, we now know that about the Topkapi. The Topkapi, the latest dating for that is 749, 750, about the same time that the Abbasids introduced, which is fascinating, because even the type of script that is used there is the Abbasid script. It's called that for a name. Why is it named that? Because they are the ones who introduced that type of script. So there is much yet to be played out on the Quran. We're not doing that in these series. We're not looking at the dates on the Qurans or the manuscripts. What we are saying is these four verses could be much later. I would go with that myself, that these are much later verses that are added at a much later time, when Muhammad was a man that was being imposed. And this idea of Muhammad being a man really is only found in the inscriptions. Remember, we talked about that. The rock inscriptions only use that kind of reference to the man Muhammad from 730 on. That's the 8th century, and that's a good 100 years after Muhammad's death.
So what we're saying here is, if we rely on these four verses in the Quran, there's a lot of question marks.
Huge question marks, especially when you realize that these four verses are probably introduced after 730.
Either the verse or the name itself.
The name itself, actually, we're going to find is earlier in the next episode.
What I'm saying, the name inserted into these passages at a later time to apply to a person versus a description.
No,
of
I'm going to
Christ.
say that is wrong because we're going to see in the next episode the Dome of the Rock.
That's my view, and I'm going to stand to it.
Okay, you can see we don't even agree. He and I don't agree on this. How can I sit there and talk with you? You don't even agree with me. But that's great. That's where and this is why everything we're doing, almost all the stuff that we're touching, is germinal. This is fascinating because until we know exactly when you can date these manuscripts, we won't be able to answer that question. Right. We can date the Dome of the Rock. And that's coming next, because the Dome of the Rock is fascinating, because I will suggest that that is where Muhammad's name is introduced. But that's for the next episode.
So that's what we are going to address next time, which is the Dome of the Rock. Very good. Well, everyone, you've heard the presentation. You heard also the different views that are being presented, not just by the two of us here, but by the other researchers as well. So we hope that you will do your own homework, especially if you are a Muslim viewer. Until we meet with you again next time, have a blessed day.